What if one day the world awoke to a new reality, one where the old superpower had crumbled and a new leader had risen to take its place? For decades, the United States ruled the world with its military dominance, economic influence, and cultural expansion. It dictated global politics, enforced its ideology through war, and shaped the economies of nations through sanctions and financial control. But now the United States is gone, a fallen empire drowning in its own failures, while China has risen to become the sole superpower. For over a century, America positioned itself as the leader of the free world. It projected its military power through endless wars in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, destabilizing nations under the pretense of spreading democracy. It controlled the world economy, forcing countries to trade in U.S. dollars while using economic sanctions as a weapon against governments that refused to submit. Its corporations dominated global markets, buying out competitors, exploiting foreign labor, and extracting resources from weaker nations. It maintained a propaganda machine that convinced the world that democracy, free speech, and human rights were universal values, while systematically undermining governments that didn't align with its interests. But no empire lasts forever. The United States collapsed, not because of external enemies, but because of its own corruption, division, and arrogance. The American economy, once the largest in the world, became a victim of its reckless financial policies. Trillions of dollars in national debt spiraled out of control, its currency weakened, and global investors abandoned the dollar in favor of China's stable yuan. Political chaos paralyzed Washington, with endless infighting between parties, riots in the streets, and a government that could no longer function. The military, once feared around the world, was stretched too thin, drained by endless conflicts that achieved nothing but destruction. As America fell, China quietly expanded. While the United States wasted its resources on wars, China invested in infrastructure. While the West lectured other nations on human rights, China formed economic partnerships based on mutual benefit. While American corporations extracted wealth from developing countries, China built roads, railways, and energy grids that connected economies across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. One by one, nations saw the truth. America's promises were empty, but China delivered results. The Belt and Road Initiative, which once seemed like just another trade program, became the backbone of a new global economy. China didn't need to invade countries to control them. It simply made them dependent. With trillions invested in global infrastructure, China held the keys to the world's supply chains. Nations that once relied on American trade were now tied to Beijing. If a country opposed China's policies, it faced economic isolation, its industries unable to function without Chinese goods and investments. The financial system was no longer dictated by American banks and Western institutions. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, once used by the U.S. to impose neoliberal policies on weaker nations, became irrelevant as China introduced its own financial networks. The U.S. dollar, once the world's reserve currency, was abandoned in favor of the Chinese yuan. Nations seeking loans or trade agreements turned to Beijing, not Washington. The days of American economic blackmail were over. China's financial empire was built on stability, not sanctions. With economic control came political power. The global order was rewritten, and the rules were now made in Beijing. The United Nations no longer served American interests. It became a platform for China's vision of international relations. The so-called rules-based order that the West had championed for decades was exposed as a tool for American dominance, and China replaced it with a system based on mutual sovereignty, economic cooperation, and strategic alliances. The days of American interventionism, where Washington dictated which governments were legitimate and which had to be overthrown, came to an end. Military dominance followed. The United States, once boasting the world's most powerful armed forces, was now in retreat. China had built a military force that could challenge and surpass the U.S. Navy, extending its influence from the South China Sea to the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and even the Arctic. Chinese military bases were established around the world, ensuring that no power could challenge Beijing's authority. Unlike the American approach, which relied on brute force and regime change wars, China used its military strategically to protect its economic interests and maintain stability in its global empire. Culturally, the shift was undeniable. For decades, American entertainment and media had dominated the world, spreading its narratives of individualism, consumerism, and Western exceptionalism. But now Hollywood was irrelevant. Chinese entertainment industries replaced American media, exporting films, television, and literature that reflected a different set of values, ones that emphasized collective progress, social harmony, and national pride. The internet, once controlled by American companies like Google and Facebook, was now centered around Chinese platforms, where information was regulated to ensure stability and prevent misinformation. Technology, once the domain of Silicon Valley, was now led by Chinese innovation. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology were no longer fields of global competition, but were controlled by Beijing's research institutions. The world's most advanced scientific discoveries were no longer happening in American universities, but in Chinese state-funded laboratories. Space exploration was no longer an American dream, but a Chinese reality. The first human colony on Mars bore the flag of the People's Republic of China. Governance changed as well. The American model of democracy, which had been exported as the ideal form of government, was exposed as deeply flawed. Its system, plagued by corruption, corporate influence, and endless partisanship, had led to societal decay rather than progress. In contrast, China's model, a system of meritocratic governance, long-term planning, and state-led economic development, proved far more effective. Nations that had once tried to emulate the American democratic model abandoned it in favor of China's efficient, centralized system. Elections became a formality rather than a necessity, as stability and economic growth took priority over ideological debates and political theater. The rise and fall of empires is inevitable. And in this world, the United States was just another fallen empire, replaced by a nation that had outlasted it, outperformed it, and reshaped the world in its image. China now stood alone at the top, and the future belonged to Beijing. The world had changed, and there was no turning back. Would this world be a future of stability and progress, or would it be a world of economic dependency and authoritarian control? Would innovation thrive under a single superpower, or would it stagnate without competition? Would freedom become an outdated concept, or would it evolve into a new form under China's leadership? What do you think? Would a China-led world be better than the one shaped by American dominance? Would it bring real progress, or just another form of control? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more thought-provoking what-if scenarios.